All right, so we are going to go ahead and go over the nodes in Maya and then see the equivalents in Houdini. And just so we can get our minds around how things work, even though you guys know this very well, I'm just going to just go over the basics in Maya, and then we're going to look at Houdini and see the differences. So just right off the bat, as you guys know, nucleus is our universe. It decides how things move through it and how things are calculated. So as you can see, we have our gravity, we have our wind and air density, we have ground plane and substeps and scene scale and start frame and all of that jazz that basically dictate the universe of the materials that are moving through it. Then we have a node that is our material node. And again, the reason I'm not saying cloth is because we can have everything from rigid objects like um, metal all the way down to honey and gum, which are very fluidy or stretchy. So we can have all of that, and we basically control everything from the way that the material stretches and compresses to its motion through the air. And then finally, we have our constraints, which their function is basically to hold certain points um, to to a place or to each other, and that's how we sew things together, or even use it to give certain areas the option not to collide or go through each other. So very robust, very good. It works fairly well and very easily. Um, so what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into Houdini over here and look at the equivalents. Um, Now, as you know, in Maya, basically what you have is a bunch of particles that are connected with springs, and when we play around with the stretch and the compression and bend angle, we basically deciding how things are going to fold. Here it kind of works similarly, just instead of having particles that are connected with springs, here it's basically connected without constraints. So the constraints are basically doing the same work as those springs, and then we can decide using different presets how we're going to work through it. So just looking at the settings, and again, I'm sure some of you guys already went and looked at some Vellum basics, but I'll just go through it here as well for those of you new. Um, our first um, constraint that I have here is called a vellum cloth. If I want to create one, I press tab on my keyboard and then start typing vellum, VELAU, and I don't even have to finish the word. I can go and choose from a wide variety of presets or nodes that kind of do a lot of stuff. For our purposes, I'm going to create a cloth. And then I'm going to plug in the most on screen left import, or the left import. I'm going to create the object that I want to sim. And on the opposite side, I'm going to, whoops, not there. I'm going to plug in the collider object. So I don't need a separate node for collisions. I basically just plug it through this node right here. So what I can do now, if I just press P on my keyboard and move some stuff over, you can see that now I'm getting all the properties of the vellum constraint right here. If I scroll right up to the very top, you can see that in the preset type, or the constraint type, it's set to cloth, and it's basically opened up a whole bunch of properties that will help me sim the cloth. And if we look carefully, we can see things that are very familiar to us from Maya. So if I go back, let's just hop back into Maya real quick, and I grab the nCloth node, you can see like up here I got stretch resistance, compression resistance, bend resistance, bend angle, all of these things. We do have an equivalent. In this case, we have like the mass and stuff up here, but here I have stretch and bend, and then the way that I play around with these settings here, I get the same results as before. So, for example, the stretchiness, I could tell by using like a calculation how much resistance to the stretch I want to put in. And you can see I got like different calculated methods here that will take one and times whatever the number is here. We'll get into that a little later. But that's basically it. All right, so you'll find that here. All right, so if I press play now, nothing's going to happen because very simply, there's no nucleus, right? There's nothing to drive the universe. And for that, I'm going to need a Vellum solver. Again, just tab and start spelling Vellum and everything will come up. And I'm just going to choose the solver from here and I can connect it. Now, there's a couple of ways to automatically connect the solver. Let me just show you the one that I like using most. Is holding down Control, pulling down a cord here and let go, and it will immediately open this. And then if I go Vellum over here, it will connect all three together at once. Let me show you another way that you can do it. You can also hold down Shift and then click, and then click, and then click, and then bring that down there, and it will do it for you. I'm going to hold down Y on my keyboard so I can cut these off, and hold down J and then reconnect them. Very comfortable. These are just basic shortcuts that you should all be aware of. So I'm just going to choose my Vellum here, and now when I press on it, you can see the collider object and you can see the simulated object. So if I now press play, you can see it'll just fall to its doom right there. All right, before we move on to create any kind of constraints, let's just go over the Vellum solver real quick. So you can see we have a few tabs here. So the solver, you can see we have the time scale, so we can slow down or speed it up. We got the sample side, both for our collisions and for our actual calculations of the cloth. We got forces over here, which we can create a wind. We can also play around with the friction and some other details here. And then under the simulation, we can tell how many megabytes to calculate before restarting the cache over. And then we have some advanced settings, which we'll talk about in a more advanced tutorial. And then the visualizers, which will allow us to see stuff like the thickness of our material. Let's say for colliders, let's see, let's see, geometry, colliders. I don't even remember which one I want to see. I don't have a group, so that's not gonna, but we can see all kind of different behaviors as we go along. Anyway, I digress. So with that, I'm going to conclude this. Now we've seen the two main nodes. When I come back, I'm going to talk about constraints and how to constrain stuff together and kind of the logic behind it. And then we'll move on to the next subject. So with that being said, let's see you in the next segment, which is constraints.